There is a silence in the soul that does not come from peace, but from pain too deep to articulate. It's the silence you keep when you've been wounded by someone you trusted, when your heart is still bleeding, but no one seems to notice the red footprints you leave behind. You smile in rooms where you feel unseen. You sit beside people who don't realize they've already buried your worth beneath their selfish desires and cruel betrayal. But pain has a memory, and more than that, pain has a witness. Some nights you lie awake, wondering if they ever feel a fraction of what they caused. You question your own worth. You rewind every conversation, every sacrifice, trying to find where you went wrong. You didn't. You were simply good to the wrong hearts, and you thought loyalty would protect you from being used. It didn't. But it wasn't in vain, because God was watching, not in the distant, indifferent way people assume, but in the stillness of your tears, in the trembling of your voice as you swallowed pain just to keep peace, in the way you prayed for them even after they left you in pieces. He watched, not as a passive observer, but as a just and loving Father. And he took note of every injustice done to your soul. They think they got away with it, don't they? But they don't have anything to reveal to you. They think they got the way. That's the cruelty of betrayal. It always seems like the betrayer walks away untouched, laughing, rebuilding, living, while you're left trying to breathe through the debris of what they destroyed in you. But what they don't see, what they cannot see, is the divine recording of every word they twisted, every lie they spread, and every part of your soul they trampled. God doesn't forget. And justice, real justice, it's poetic. That's why. He says, wait. You're not being punished in your patience, you're being positioned. The delay isn't God's silence, it's his preparation. You see, what they meant for harm is about to turn into the very soil from which your restoration will bloom. The silence you feel is not abandonment, it's strategy. Heaven is arranging a table, and the guest list is already being written, including those who mocked your fall. The same eyes that watched you break will soon witness your rising. But for now you are hidden, not because you're forgotten, but because you're sacred. God hides what he values. Just like a gardener buries a seed, not to destroy it, but to give it time, to grow roots that no storm can rip from the earth. That's you. You were not buried by betrayal, you were planted. And soon they'll realize they never buried you. They underestimated the divine hand covering your life. So wait, not with bitterness, but with boldness, not with despair, but with dignity. Because when God reveals what he's been working on in the dark, it will not just restore you. It will humble those who believed their actions had no consequences. You may have walked away empty, but you're coming back full. You may have cried in silence, but your vindication will be loud. You may have been mistreated without witnesses, but the justice will come with an audience. They never saw the divine camera rolling when they dismissed you, disrespected you, betrayed you, but God saw. And now, wait and watch. They hurt you in secret, but God took notes in silence. There is a unique kind of pain that doesn't come from strangers, but from those you let into the sacred chambers of your life, those to whom you handed your trust without hesitation, believing that loyalty would be met with loyalty, that your goodness would be a mirror reflecting itself back through their actions. But instead, what you gave was used as leverage against you. Your kindness was mistaken for weakness, your silence for stupidity, your love for something disposable. They hurt you quietly, no spectacle, no bloodshed, just the kind of betrayal that happens in the shadows, behind your back, in rooms you weren't invited to, with words that twisted your truth, made a mockery of your intentions, and turned your name into a whisper, passed around with judgment. And while you were busy believing in them, they were busy preparing their exit, poisoning your reputation, enjoying the ease with which they could pull you apart without facing the light. But God saw. He saw the moment your heart dropped when their words turned cold. He saw the night you cried in silence, wondering how love could sour so suddenly, how loyalty could evaporate like it was never real. He witnessed you trying to hold it together while everything in you was falling apart. Every tear you wiped quietly, Every time you smiled while screaming inside. Every moment you questioned your own worth, thinking maybe if you had been more patient, more understanding, more forgiving, they would have stayed. But the truth is, their betrayal had nothing to do with your lack and everything to do with their nature. They hid behind charm, they pretended well. They crafted masks so convincing that even you, so discerning, so intuitive, couldn't see what was beneath. And when they left, they didn't just walk away, they erased you, made you out to be the villain in the story they narrated to others. And you bore the shame of their lies while they carried the comfort of your silence, because you didn't expose them. You didn't fight back. You let God handle it. That silence, it wasn't weakness. It was sacred. It was strength in disguise. Because while they thought they were getting away with it, God was writing, recording, storing every offense, every betrayal, every deception in his perfect memory. He doesn't need cameras. He doesn't need proof. He was the witness you never saw but always had. The divine justice system is slow only because it's precise. It doesn't just balance the scale. It tilts it in favor of the innocent at the perfect time. You see, the problem with those who do evil in secret is that they think secrecy is safety. They believe that if no one saw it, it didn't happen. But God sees in the dark. His justice doesn't depend on exposure. It depends on truth, and truth has a way of rising, no matter how deep they try to bury it. Your pain was never invisible to him. In fact, it was the very ink he used to start writing the next chapter of your life. While you were breaking, he was building. While you were crying, he was collecting. While you were hiding your hurt, he was highlighting your future. You don't have to chase justice. It's already chasing them. And what they did in secret will one day echo so loudly, even they won't be able to escape the sound. You were the light in their darkness, and they still betrayed you. You were the one who brought light into their shadows, not because you were trying to be a savior, but because that's just who you are. You give without measuring, you forgive without calculation, and you stay even when it would be easier to walk away. You saw their brokenness and didn't run from it. You leaned in. You believed that love could heal what life had damaged in them. You showed up, time and time again, when others turned away. You offered stability to their chaos, compassion to their cruelty, and presence to their absence. But they didn't see your light for what it was. They weren't used to it. They were too familiar with the darkness, too comfortable in it. And instead of being grateful for what you gave, they resented you for it. Your strength exposed their weakness. Your consistency made their instability look shameful. Your loyalty held up a mirror to their deceit. And so they turned against you, not because you wronged them, but because your light was too bright for their shadowed hearts to handle. They betrayed you not because you failed them, but because they failed themselves. Your presence reminded them of everything they were not willing to become. And so, rather than rise with you, they tried to pull you down. They thought if they could dim your light, they wouldn't have to face their own darkness. They didn't just betray you to walk away. They betrayed you to silence the truth that your goodness spoke about who they really were. But even then, God was watching. He saw how you stayed silent, not because you had nothing to say, but because your heart was too noble to play dirty. He saw how you wrestled with confusion, blaming yourself for their betrayal, asking what you did wrong when all you did was love right. He watched as you bent over backwards just to be understood by people who had already decided to misunderstand you. He saw the burden you carried for love that was never returned with the same purity, and he wept with you. Yes, he wept, because you weren't just light, you were light in someone's storm, a beacon when they were lost, and instead of following that light to healing, they tried to snuff it out. But here's what they didn't realize. You weren't their source. You were the reflection of something greater, something eternal. And when they tried to extinguish you, they picked a fight with the one who lit your fire in the first place. They walked away from a blessing. And you walked straight into protection. Because God doesn't let his light be mishandled forever. When the ones he sends are mistreated, he doesn't retaliate with noise. He responds with silence that shakes foundations. You were the chance they didn't recognize, the prayer they didn't honor, and now they are left to sit in the very darkness you once pulled them out of. God removed you to protect you, not to punish you. Sometimes the greatest pain isn't in being left behind, it's in not understanding why. You look at the emptiness around you and mistake it for abandonment. You interpret distance as punishment. You question yourself with relentless precision. What did I do wrong? Why did they leave? Why does it feel like everyone I fought for is the one who turned against me? But what if it wasn't your failure that caused the separation? What if it was God's mercy that allowed it? There are places in your life where people took root who never deserved to be planted there in the first place. You welcomed them because your heart was wide open. You let them in because you were taught to believe in the goodness of others. You nurtured the bond, even when they gave you every reason to let go. You held on, thinking loyalty would cure disloyalty. But sometimes God will tear apart what you're trying to hold together. Not to harm you, but to save you from what you cannot see. You didn't know the depth of their deception. You couldn't hear the conversations that happened when you left the room. You didn't recognize the envy hiding behind those fake smiles, the judgment behind the nods of approval, the disdain behind the compliments. But God did, and before their betrayal could destroy you completely, He intervened in a way that looked like rejection, but it was actually redirection. He let them walk away. He allowed the silence. He watched as they ghosted you, ignored you, used you, replaced you. Not because you were unworthy, but because He was rescuing you from what was killing you slowly. He saw the strings they were pulling behind your back. He saw the masks they wore when they stood beside you. And when it was time, He stepped in. Not with thunder, not with fire, but with stillness. The kind that leaves you confused at first, but eventually reveals itself as divine protection. The pain you felt wasn't punishment. It was a severing, a sacred separation that had to happen for you to breathe again, because you were holding on to people who didn't value your presence, who manipulated your forgiveness, who treated your softness as something to exploit. And God, in His love, removed them, not because He didn't love you, but because He loves you too much to let you stay in environments that make you question your worth. When God removes someone, He's not asking for your opinion. He's acting for your survival. You may not see the danger now. You may still be grieving their absence, replaying the good memories and wondering if you overreacted. But trust this. What God removes, He replaces with something greater. Something that won't cost your peace just to feel wanted. You weren't left behind. You were lifted out. He didn't abandon you. He upgraded your circle. He didn't take away your support. He exposed your enemies. He didn't silence them to protect their reputation. He silenced them because they were never meant to have a permanent role in your life story. Their part was temporary, and trying to force them into your future would only corrupt what God is building for you. So, if you're still weeping over their exit, if you're still questioning why they let you go, maybe it's time to realize they didn't walk away. God walked them out, because where you're going, not everyone can follow, and the ones who left, they were never meant to witness what's next. Their actions have consequences. Judgment is never instant, but always accurate. In a world obsessed with speed, people assume that silence means absence and delay means escape. But divine justice doesn't move at the pace of the internet or the demands of revenge. It operates on truth, and truth doesn't expire. That's the part they never considered. When they mocked you, betrayed you, discarded you like your worth was seasonal, they assumed silence meant safety. They mistook God's patience for approval. But they were wrong. The delay of justice is not denial of it, it's precision. It's the careful gathering of what they've sown, so that when the harvest comes, it mirrors exactly what they planted. You see, the laws of heaven are not like the laws of man. There are no loopholes, no technicalities, no manipulation of evidence. Every hidden insult, every lie, every deception, they all return to the sender, multiplied. Because the universe doesn't forget and God doesn't overlook. They thought your tears were weak. They thought your silence was surrender. They laughed when you disappeared from their circle, never realizing that their joy was borrowed from borrowed time. And while they built their lives on false foundations, yours was being rebuilt in truth. You weren't chasing justice because justice was already in motion. Quiet, slow, unshakable. There is something terrifying about divine judgment, not because it is loud, but because it is inescapable. It doesn't need to announce its arrival. It simply shows up. It may take days, months, or even years, but when it arrives, it knows exactly where to strike. It finds the lie that broke you, the betrayal that scarred you, the action that silenced you, and it brings it back full circle, not out of cruelty, but out of balance. Because the scales of justice are always tipping, and eventually they lean in favor of the innocent. You may have walked through seasons where it felt like they thrived while you barely survived. You saw them smiling while you were still aching. You watched them succeed while your soul was crawling out of ruins, and you thought, did God forget? Did heaven miss this? No, what you didn't see was the ticking, the divine countdown, the moment when the truth would no longer be avoidable, when masks would fall, when everything they built on lies would collapse under the weight of their own deceit. They don't know it yet, but it's coming. And not because you cursed them or plotted revenge, but because every universe governed by righteousness cannot allow imbalance forever. What was done to you was not unnoticed. It was recorded in the very soul of creation, and the one who saw it all has already issued the return. That's why you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to argue. You don't need an audience to believe you. You just need patience. Because what's coming for them won't need your permission. And when it arrives, it will speak louder than every accusation they ever threw your way. The same people who broke you will watch you rise stronger than ever. There is a certain kind of arrogance that lives in the hearts of those who hurt others and walk away smiling. They believe they've won. That by damaging your spirit and discarding your love, they've proven something. Maybe they believe they're smarter, more powerful, or untouchable. There's a pride in them that assumes you'll never get up again, that you'll spend the rest of your days crawling through the ruins they left behind. They counted you out, and they did it with certainty. But what they didn't know, what they never even considered, was that your silence wasn't surrender. It was sacred rebuilding. You see, when they broke you, they thought it was the end of your story. They mistook your moment of weakness for a lifetime of defeat. They assumed your tears were the final chapter. But pain, real pain, doesn't destroy people like you. It transforms you. It shakes your bones, yes. It cracks your spirit, yes. But it also awakens something they never saw coming. The will to rise, not bitter but better, not vengeful but victorious. They broke you publicly, or maybe they broke you privately, or no one else could see. They wounded you in ways words cannot always explain. They robbed you of your joy and left you wondering if healing was even possible. But that was not your end. That was your threshold, your rebirth. The starting line of a transformation that doesn't happen in comfort, but in the cold silence of grief, isolation, and divine redefinition. What they shattered, God held. What they tossed aside, heaven restored. And now a time is coming. Yes, a moment written into the blueprint of your destiny, where those same people, the ones who mocked your fall, will witness your rise. Not because you need to prove anything, not because you are interested in revenge, but because divine justice has a way of making things visible. God will not allow your healing to remain hidden. He will not allow your growth to go unnoticed. The same people who thought you would fade into irrelevance will be forced to watch your name rise in rooms they were certain you'd never enter again. This isn't about showmanship, it's about truth. It's about the righteous hand of God revealing that no man, no betrayal, no mistreatment can cancel the calling placed on your life. They thought they had the final word, but God was just beginning, and His voice carries farther. His story lasts longer. His version of your life will always outshine their rumors. They tried to define you by your pain. They wanted the world to believe the broken version of you was the real one. But that version, the one they left for dead, is no longer here. You've become someone new, not harder but wiser, not colder but more guarded. And most importantly, you've become someone they can no longer reach, manipulate, or diminish. You are no longer available to those who broke you, and that fact alone will haunt them more than anything else. There will be a day when they scroll through a screen, sit in a room, or hear your name mentioned in awe, and they'll have no choice but to swallow the reality that you didn't just survive what they did, you used it as fuel. You didn't just endure the pain, you turned it into power. You took what was meant to bury you and built a foundation strong enough to carry a future they were never meant to be part of. And here's the part they'll never admit. Deep down, they know. They know you were never the problem. They know they mishandled something sacred. They know they broke someone who would have protected them with everything. And while they may never say it out loud, they will sit in rooms filled with regret, not because they lost you, but because they lost access to a version of love and loyalty they'll never find again. They'll try to downplay your rise, of course. They'll say, you changed, or you got lucky, or it's not that serious. But inside, they'll know. They'll remember every moment they had your loyalty and wasted it. Every time they had your trust and shattered it. And when they watch you succeed, not in spite of what they did, but because of how you responded to it, that's when the silence will speak louder than anything you could have ever said. God is not just in the business of healing, He is in the business of display. When He brings someone out of the fire, He doesn't just dust off the ashes and send them on their way. He places them on a mountaintop, in full view of those who watched them burn. Because your story isn't just about you. It's about the evidence of grace, the testimony of redemption, the undeniable truth that no amount of betrayal can undo what was divinely assigned to you. God is preparing a table for you, and they'll be there to witness it. There's a divine mystery in the way God works, quiet, steady, deliberate. While you were busy trying to keep yourself from falling apart, while your world was collapsing and your heart barely remembered how to beat without breaking, God was setting a table that you couldn't see, a table you weren't ready to sit at yet. But it was being prepared piece by piece, silently, in the background of your suffering. And the most powerful part? Those who caused your deepest pain will one day stand and watch as you take your seat at that table. There were days you felt invisible, like your cries evaporated into the ceiling, like your prayers were unanswered, letters returned with silence. You gave people the best of you, and they gave you the worst of themselves. You stayed loyal to those who were never loyal to you. You forgave betrayals they didn't even ask forgiveness for. You carried the weight of conversations that never happened, apologies that never came, closure that was never granted. But through it all, God was watching, and He wasn't just taking notes, He was designing justice. You see, divine justice doesn't show up as revenge. It doesn't wear the clothes of retaliation. It dresses itself in honor, dignity, restoration, and elevation. God doesn't stoop to the level of your enemies. He raises you above it. And when He says He will prepare a table for you in the presence of those who hurt you, He means more than just success. He He means peace that radiates in rooms where they once tried to shatter your spirit. He means strength that makes you unrecognizable to those who once fed off your weakness. He means joy that no longer depends on validation and a sense of worth that no betrayal can touch. The ones who lied about you, who twisted your truth, who made you feel small and disposable, they're not going to be erased from your story. They're going to witness the next chapter, because sometimes God doesn't remove your enemies, He reserves them, not to glorify their actions, but to ensure that they see what becomes of a soul they tried to destroy. He brings them close enough to watch, but not close enough to touch. They'll have front row seats, not to your downfall, but to your divine comeback. It's a sacred reversal. The very mouths that spoke against you will be silenced, not by force, but by awe. The same voices that once said, "You'll never recover," will whisper, "How did they make it?" But they won't dare say it too loud, because deep inside they'll know. They'll remember the way they treated you, the things they said when you weren't around, the satisfaction they felt when they saw you breaking. And now that memory will be their silence. God doesn't prepare the table in a hidden place. He doesn't hide your blessing out of sight. He places it right where it needs to be seen, not for your ego, but for His justice. Not because you need to rub it in anyone's face, but because truth must stand where lies were once allowed to reign. Your victory will not be whispered in secret. It will be revealed in the exact places where you were once misunderstood, dismissed, and underestimated. And you won't be the same when it happens. That's what makes it even more powerful. By the time God lays out that table, you'll have healed so deeply that the sight of your enemies no longer brings bitterness. You'll sit in peace, not revenge. You'll eat in grace, not gloating. And that will confuse them more than anything, because they expect you to become what they were, cold, cruel, calculating. But instead, you will remain everything they are not. You will remain whole. Imagine that moment. The very people who left you when you had nothing will have to watch you being honored without ever receiving an invitation to share in it. They'll see the love you now receive from those who truly see you. They'll witness the strength in your eyes that they once tried to dim. They'll recognize that what they walked away from was actually rare, irreplaceable, and sacred. And it will be too late to return, because when God prepares a table, it isn't for reunion, it's for revelation. This is not just about proving them wrong. It's about showing what God does with broken pieces when they're placed in His hands. It's about redemption that cannot be explained by logic. It's about grace that transforms ashes into beauty right before the eyes of those who caused the fire. They may not be punished in the way you expected, but trust this. They will feel it. Watching you thrive after they tried to erase you is a kind of justice that reaches places no punishment ever could. Your life will be the evidence. Your peace will be the punishment. Your joy will be the answer to every question they're too ashamed to ask. And the table? It will be set with everything they said you didn't deserve. They won't understand how it happened. They'll search for explanations, try to find holes in your story. But what they won't be able to deny is that something greater than them was always on your side. And the table God prepares will say everything you never had to. Your delay was not denial. It was the making of a divine comeback. There's something heavy about waiting. Not the kind of waiting you do in traffic or for a phone call. No, this is the kind of waiting that sits in your bones. It's the kind that makes you wonder if anything is ever going to shift in your favor. You pray, you believe, you cry in silence, but still nothing moves. Days pass into nights, and those nights become seasons. And in that long stretch of uncertainty, a thought creeps in, slow and cold. Maybe this is it. Maybe things won't get better. maybe God forgot. But what if he didn't? What if the delay you've been grieving wasn't abandonment, but preparation? What if the silence wasn't rejection, but divine construction? Because when God is building something that lasts, he doesn't rush. When he's rewriting your story after betrayal, heartbreak, and devastation, he doesn't use shortcuts. He takes his time, not because he's slow, but because he's thorough. You see, when they hurt you, they thought they'd buried you. They thought they had destroyed your name, crushed your confidence, ruined your chances at becoming something more. They expected your silence to be permanent. They mistook your heartbreak for a full stop. But God looked at that brokenness and saw foundation, not the end, but the beginning. And he whispered to the heavens, "Wait, I'm not finished." The delay wasn't to punish you, it was to develop you. In the hidden places, where no applause echoed and no spotlight shone, God was refining your character. He was deepening your strength. He was stripping away every false dependency, every insecurity, every wound that could be weaponized against your future. He was taking the poison they injected and turning it into wisdom. He was extracting the bitterness they left behind and making space for unshakable peace. Because a comeback isn't just about arriving at something better, it's about becoming someone stronger. And that kind of transformation can't be rushed. The delay was divine. It kept you away from people who would have only repeated the same cycles. It closed doors that would have led to more pain. It removed access to those who had the power to destroy you again. You were not being denied. You were being hidden until you were ready to rise without falling again. Think of it. You were building in silence. They thought you disappeared. They thought your worth expired the moment they walked away. But what they couldn't see was that your value was never in their hands to begin with. Your worth was never up for negotiation. It was never based on their approval, and the longer God made you wait, the more intricate the comeback he was preparing. And now, everything you lost is coming back with interest, but not in the way the world gives. You won't just get things, you'll get clarity, you'll get peace. You'll get freedom from the torment of needing validation from broken people. You'll gain discernment so sharp you'll never again tolerate what once broke you. The delay didn't take from you, it added to you in ways you didn't even realize. While they celebrated your silence, heaven was scripting your return, and what a return it will be. God doesn't do small restorations, he restores in full. And when he brings you back, it won't be to the same space, with the same people, doing the same things. It'll be a version of you so elevated that even those who tried to break you won't recognize the strength in your eyes, the steadiness in your voice, the power in your presence. The version of you that emerges from the waiting will not be someone who needs to explain themselves. You won't have to prove anything, you'll simply live, and your life will do the speaking. They assumed you were stuck, they thought you were finished. But what they called a delay, God called the drawing of the bow, because that's how he works. He pulls you back, not to hold you down, but to launch you further. The tighter the pull, the more powerful the release. The more silent the season, the louder the comeback. What felt like isolation was really preservation. What looked like defeat was really incubation. You were growing, quietly, painfully, powerfully. And the beauty of it all, when you rise, and you will, it won't be in arrogance. It won't be with bitterness in your hands or revenge in your mouth. It'll be with gratitude in your heart and grace in your spirit, because you'll know the delay was never to destroy you, it was to rebuild you stronger than before, and your rise will be undeniable, unstoppable, untouchable. The people who counted you out will see it. The ones who whispered about your downfall will witness your elevation, and they will know, they will absolutely know, that this was never luck. It was divine. It was orchestrated. It was a response from heaven to everything you endured silently, everything you survived quietly. The delay wasn't God changing his mind. It was him proving his power, slowly, deliberately, righteously. God saw what they did with you. Wait and watch. You didn't deserve the pain they handed you. You didn't ask for the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation. You never expected the people you trusted to be the ones who would pierce your soul so deeply, but they did, and for a while it felt like they won. They laughed while you cried. They moved on while you were still trying to find your footing. They painted you as the villain while you were still trying to process why the story ended the way it did. But God saw it all. He saw what happened behind closed doors. He saw the weight you carried in silence, the nights you cried into your pillow, the days you forced a smile while your heart was still bleeding. He saw when you were misunderstood, when you were blamed for things you didn't do, when you stayed silent to keep peace while others twisted the narrative to protect their own pride. And while they thought they escaped justice, heaven was recording every detail. You were never alone in your suffering. The delay was not God ignoring you. It was God preparing something they could never touch. A future so secure, a peace so unshakable, a table so abundant that even your enemies would have no choice but to watch it unfold. Not because you demanded revenge, but because God is a God of justice. Because he defends those who are pure in heart. Because he vindicates those who choose silence over spite, dignity over drama, and healing over hatred. Now is not the time to look back in bitterness. It's time to rise with purpose, with grace, with confidence that comes from knowing that heaven never turned a blind eye, that every tear you shed watered the soil of your elevation, that every ounce of pain was not wasted, it was invested, and the harvest is coming. So walk forward, not with the burden of what they did, but with the blessing of what God is doing. Let your life be the answer. Let your peace be the proof. Let your strength be the justice. And when they watch you rise, when they see what you've become after everything they did, say nothing. Just smile, because the greatest revenge is restoration, and God is already setting the stage. Just wait and watch.